He told me I didn't belong in the neighborhood. Years later, he came knocking for a room. But he had no idea who I had become. Wait until you see what happens next. The first time I saw him, he was polishing his Lexus in the driveway like it was a newborn baby. That kind of slow, smug movement that told you everything you needed to know. He was not just cleaning it. He was performing. For the neighbors. For me. I had just pulled up in my dusty pickup, still covered in sawdust from the site I was working on. My boots left little prints on his perfectly edged grass as I stepped out. That was my first mistake. He did not say anything at first, just looked down at my tires, then up at my clothes, and gave me the kind of nod people reserve for toddlers holding toy tools. A slow, pitying nod. Then he said it. That first seed he ever planted. This neighborhood's a bit ambitious, huh? I smiled, said nothing, and grabbed the last moving box out of the back seat. That was nearly 15 years ago. His name was Leonard. Wore sweater vests in the summer and made sure everyone knew he ran something important. Finance, real estate, something with initials. The kind of guy who never forgot to mention his golf club membership or his wife's Pilates instructor. His house. Immaculate. Like a model home that nobody really lived in. His lawn had straighter lines than most spreadsheets. Mine? I was still laying gravel for the walkway and patching drywall with my own hands. I had just scraped together enough to buy into the lowest-priced lot in that gated community, a stretch by any means. A foreclosure, really, but I saw the bones. I knew what it could be. He never said anything directly insulting. That was not Leonard's style. He preferred quiet digs wrapped in smiles. Hope you can keep up around here, he once said while trimming his hedges. Some folks find it a little fast-paced. Not for everyone. Another time, during the HOA block meeting, he offered me a handout on landscaping. Unsolicited. Just in case you need guidance, he said, smiling with those bleached teeth. It was not just the words, it was the way he said them. Every glance was a checkmark. My car. My boots. The lunch I brought in a plastic bag. Like he was trying to see where the flaw was. What made me not belong? I never rose to it. Not once. I nodded. I smiled. And I worked. Because I knew something he did not. I knew that life is long. And sometimes the people who look like they are ahead are just burning out faster. Back then, I was still taking side jobs. Building decks on weekends, flipping rundown sheds into studios, renting out tools. I was not flashy, but I was focused. I kept to myself. I built equity, not enemies. But the moment that set everything into motion, that came one night when Leonard's wife, Clarissa, knocked on my door. She looked shaken, her voice low. I am so sorry to bother you, she whispered. Leonard, he lost something. Something big. I let her in, thinking she meant keys or a pet. But I was wrong. It was not a key. It was everything. And that is when things started to change. Clarissa stood in my foyer like she had never been in a house with chipped baseboards before. She kept glancing around, at the tools leaning in the corner, the scuffed floor, the smell of varnish still fresh from a project I had been finishing in the kitchen. She held her purse like a shield. He lost the contract, she said finally, her voice trembling. I was not sure what she meant yet, but she looked like someone whose world had been tilted sideways. Her hands shook when she tried to sip the water I gave her. He bet everything on a resort project out west. Took out a second mortgage. Used credit lines from the firm. Her voice broke for a second. It fell apart. And now. That was all she needed to say. Leonard had always walked like the world owed him stability. The type who probably thought bad luck was for other people. So to hear that his kingdom had cracks? I will be honest, it stirred something in me. Not joy. Not gloating. Just recognition. I had seen that same panic in my own reflection years back, when I first realized I was 2 missed paychecks from sleeping in my truck. I had pulled myself out of that hole with grit, spreadsheets, and a whole lot of humble pie. But Leonard? He was not built for humble. I asked if they were okay, if she needed help. She shook her head. No. I should not have come. I thought you should know. He has been drinking more. He's angry. And, well, you know how he gets. That last line lingered. Because yeah, I did know. The door slammed 2 nights later. Leonard, red-eyed and stinking of bourbon, was standing on my porch. No golf sweater. Just a wrinkled button-up and bare feet. Like he had stumbled out of a dream and landed here. You think you're better than me? He slurred. You think you belong here now? I stood in the doorway, calm, watching a man come apart at the seams. He was cracking, but still trying to swing. I saw your truck at the auction last month, he sneered. Buying up broken houses like some vulture. It was true. I had bought a foreclosed unit 2 streets down, one with rotting beams and raccoons in the attic. But what Leonard did not know was what I had done with it. By then, I owned 3 homes in that neighborhood, all fixed up, all rented out, all under a holding company with a different name. And one of them was about to show up in the classifieds. The listing would hit the next morning. 1 room available. Short-term rental. All utilities included. Leonard would see it. He would not recognize the name on the listing, but he would need it. And he would apply. I was not planning revenge. I was just offering opportunity. The universe, though, it has a way of coming full circle. And when Leonard walked into that open house, clipboard in hand, desperate and oblivious, he had no idea whose door he was standing in front of. Not yet, but he would. The rental ad went live on a Thursday morning. Just a quiet little post. No photos of the landlord, just the essentials. 1 furnished room in a quiet neighborhood. Utilities covered. Month-to-month lease. First and last due at signing. I listed the contact under a company name, Granite Hollow Rentals. Sounded respectable. Generic enough to blend in. Formal enough to attract the right kind of interest. Within 24 hours, I had 4 emails. The 4th one stopped me cold. Hi, this is Leonard D. I'm looking for short-term accommodations due to recent financial hardship. Your listing caught my eye. I stared at the screen for a long minute. Read it twice, then again. He signed it like a professional. Punctuated every sentence. No mention of who he used to be. No trace of the man who once told me, "This street's not for everyone." He did not know. He really did not know. I replied, of course. Told him we could do a showing Monday evening. That he should bring ID, proof of income if possible, and be prepared to fill out a background check. Standard stuff. I used a different email to respond, kept everything professional. No clues. The thing is, the house he was applying for? It sat right next to the one he used to own. His old place, 5 bedrooms, wraparound porch, fancy stonework, had gone to foreclosure 6 months earlier. Quiet sale. Bank bought it back. I snagged it for a fraction. Renovated it. And now it sat rented out to a young couple who never once asked about the previous owner. Leonard's name? Erased. Now he was coming back. Not as a neighbor. Not as a homeowner. As a tenant. I will never forget the moment he walked up to the porch. He was early, dressed sharp, still trying to hold the look. Fresh haircut, old leather shoes polished to death. But you could see it in the eyes. The gloss of someone running out of options. Nice place, he said. Reminds me of a house I used to live next to. I nodded. He looked around the porch, not noticing the little changes I had made. The swing I installed, the upgraded trim, the reclaimed wood railing. He stepped inside without hesitation. I have been staying with a friend, he said. Just until things stabilize. You know how it goes. Oh, I knew. He walked the space like he was trying to remember how dignity felt. Touched the counters, checked the blinds. Made a comment about the water pressure, how it would need to be just right for his morning routine. Then he turned to me. You the landlord? That was the moment. That breath. That pause. I looked him straight in the eye and said, calm as ever, I manage the property. Owner prefers privacy. He nodded like that made sense. And in that moment, I saw it. He had no clue. Not yet. But something shifted in his expression. A flicker. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. And I knew what he was thinking. He knew my voice. Leonard stood there with his mouth slightly open, like a thought was trying to form and just could not land. He rubbed his jaw. That same jaw he used to clench whenever I parked my old truck too close to the curb outside his house. You sound familiar, he said slowly. I shrugged. Maybe. His eyes stayed on me for a few beats too long. Then he looked away, pretending to examine the cabinet hinges. He was stalling. He was trying to place me. I walked past him and opened the back door to let him see the yard. Freshly trimmed, small patio, string lights overhead. The same lights he once mocked during a block party by saying, festive. In a flea market sort of way. He stepped out into the yard and took a deep breath like he needed air. Then he said it again. You sure we haven't met? This time, I met his gaze. Could be, I replied. I have lived around here a long time. He paused again. I could see the wheels turning. But he shook it off. Pride, I guess. Pride can blind you when the truth is staring you in the face. He filled out the rental application with the same silver pen he used to bring to HOA meetings, the one with his initials etched into the side. LDR. I watched as he tried to steady his hand, his signature coming out just slightly off from the smooth cursive I remembered. After he finished, I scanned the paperwork while he watched me, probably hoping I would not notice how thin his employment history had gotten or how his listed references shared one too many last names. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me something unexpected. A business card. Plain white. No logo. Just his name. And the title, Consultant. No company. No website. Just a number and an email. That was new. The Leonard I used to know would have handed out glossy cards thicker than most wallets, with gold foil and a tagline underneath like Solutions Architect or Capital Specialist. This one felt like it had been printed at a gas station kiosk. He saw me eye it. Just something to stay busy, he said. People still need advice, especially when times get uncertain. He was trying to project strength, but I could see the desperation under it. The man who used to throw his financial weight around the neighborhood was now shopping for rooms, using a fake smile and a borrowed jacket. You'll hear from me soon, I told him. He nodded. Hope so. As he turned to leave, he paused in the doorway and looked back one last time. You really do seem familiar, he said again, this time quieter. We never had any issues, did we? I waited a second. Then I smiled. No, not really. But as the door closed behind him, I felt something I had not expected. Not triumph. Not revenge. Something colder. Because in his desperation, Leonard had brought someone with him. Someone I recognized instantly. His daughter. And she had seen me. And I knew. She remembered everything. She had not said a word the whole visit. Just stood quietly behind Leonard like a shadow, arms folded, face unreadable. Maybe 16, 17 years old now. Taller than I remembered. Her hair longer. Same sharp eyes, though. The kind that watched everything and forgot nothing. Her name was Marissa. The last time I had seen her was a neighborhood block party. She could not have been more than 10. Leonard had made a big show of grilling steaks, passing out overpriced wine, giving people advice they never asked for. Back then, I was still finishing drywall in my own living room. She had wandered off from the crowd and stood at my fence, watching me work through the open window. I offered her a ginger soda, and she smiled. Just a quiet moment. No words. Until Leonard showed up. He snatched the can from her hand like it was poison and looked straight at me. She doesn't need that, he said. Let's not lower the bar. That line stuck with me for years. Now here she was. Leaner, older, dressed in thrifted clothes that did not quite fit, holding a phone that had a cracked screen and a faded pop socket. She had grown into the kind of kid who carried tension in her shoulders, like she was used to bracing for whatever came next. She was halfway down the porch steps when she looked back. Her dad had gone ahead, already halfway to the car. She stared at me for a second, then tilted her head. You fixed up his old house, she said quietly. It was not a question. I said nothing. She nodded like that confirmed something. Then added, you were the guy with the loud dog and the broken fence. He hated you. That made me smile a little. She paused again. You still got the dog? I shook my head. Past a few years back. I liked her. And then, just before turning to leave, she said something that nearly stopped me cold. Dad thinks he's here because of bad luck, she said. But it was not luck. He burned every bridge he ever had. Then she walked to the car, climbed in, and shut the door. I stood there in silence, watching the taillights disappear down the street. I should have felt satisfied. But instead, I felt this strange ache in my chest. Not for Leonard. Not even for the past. For her. For the girl who had once smiled at me over a soda can and now rode shotgun in a man's downfall. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table with Leonard's application in one hand and my phone in the other. I could have tossed it. I could have declined. But instead, I opened the lease agreement template. Because I had just decided something. I was going to let him move in. But not for payback. Not for power. I wanted him to see what dignity looks like. Because one day soon, he was going to realize that the man he once pitied now owned the roof over his head. And that realization? It was coming fast. Monday rolled back around like a storm cloud. By 5 in the evening, the lease was signed. First and last month's rent wired. Keys handed off. Leonard had officially moved in. Room 2B. He parked a different car that day. A beat-up silver sedan with a dented door and no hubcaps. No more Lexus. No more leather seats. Just a rattling old commuter that coughed when it turned off. He kept his head down, said little, carried 2 duffel bags and 1 box labeled documents. No help. No Clarissa. Just him and the daughter. She stayed quiet, helped him carry things without being asked. I gave him the house rules. No smoking indoors. Quiet hours after 10. Trash goes out Sunday night. He nodded to each one like he was back in school, afraid to be the wrong kind of student. The first night, I watched the lights flicker on in his room, watched his silhouette move across the window blinds. He was pacing, probably still trying to understand how it had come to this. A few days passed, and he started making small talk in the kitchen. Basic stuff, weather, local sports, gas prices. But he avoided looking at me too long, like his brain was trying to warn him that something did not add up. Then it happened. He came into the kitchen Thursday morning while I was frying eggs. He stopped, sniffed the air, and said, "Used to smell that exact combo on my street. Every Sunday. Bacon and cedar sawdust." I kept cooking, maybe just a familiar mix. He sat down at the small table, fidgeted with the salt shaker, eyes scanning the kitchen like he was trying to read the history off the walls. "You ever work in carpentry?" he asked. I nodded. I built cabinets. Still do sometimes. He grunted. "We had a guy like that on our old block. Always hammering at weird hours. Never finished the damn fence." I set the pan down gently. He kept talking. Drove a beat-up Ford, the kind you could hear 3 streets away. I wiped my hands. He looked up at me. Really looked. And for the first time, his eyes went wide. Not just recognition. Full-blown memory. "You." His voice cracked. Just one word. I pulled out a chair and sat across from him. No expression. No gloating. "I lived next door to you for almost 8 years. He slumped back in the chair like the wind had been knocked out of him. "You bought my house," he said, barely above a whisper. I nodded once. "And this one. And 2 others on the block." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. It shook. This is your place?" I nodded again. He looked down, then laughed once. A short, bitter sound. All this time he muttered. And I never saw it coming. I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I leaned forward. "You once said this neighborhood wasn't for everyone." He closed his eyes. I remember. I stood up, grabbed my coffee, and walked to the door. "Welcome home, Leonard." He did not answer. He just sat there, staring at the salt shaker like it was the last solid thing in his world. And from that moment on, he knew. He was living in the house of the man he once tried to push out. After that morning, something shifted in the air. Leonard still stayed. He paid rent, took out the trash on Sundays, even watered the lawn once or twice. But the fire was gone. He walked slower, talked less. The man who once barked at landscapers now whispered in the hallway like a guest in someone else's life. He avoided me when he could. I did not press him. I just let the days do the talking. Marissa, though, she started showing up in the common spaces more. We shared the kitchen sometimes, and she would ask about my tools, about the tenant upstairs, about how long I had owned the place. She was smart, observant. You could tell she had spent a lifetime watching her father bluff through rooms. One night, she came into the living room while I was replacing a drawer track on the TV stand. "You know he still thinks this is temporary," she said. "That something is going to bounce back. Some old contact will call. Some miracle will show up." I kept working. She sat down on the armrest of the couch, picked up one of the screws I had laid out. "He used to call this whole neighborhood a paper palace. Said guys like you were just passing through." I chuckled at that. Guess I passed through long enough to buy the whole block. She laughed, a dry little exhale that sounded too old for her age. Then she said, "I know what he did to you." That stopped me. She did not elaborate, did not list the comments, the digs, the silent votes at the HOA meetings. She did not need to. She had seen it all. We sat there for a moment, me with my drill in hand, her with a screw between her fingers, spinning it slowly like she was trying to unwind a memory. "He told me once," she said quietly, "that people like us don't end up needing people like you." I looked over at her. Her eyes stayed fixed on the wall. "And now?" She shrugged. "Now he's paying you to keep the lights on." The next morning, Leonard left a note on the kitchen counter. "Rent's paid early. Had some extra. Figured I'd stay ahead of it." There was a small smiley face drawn next to it. I read it, folded it, and tucked it into the drawer where I kept things that used to mean something. But that was not the real moment. The real moment came 2 weeks later. Leonard knocked on my office door. I opened it, and he stood there holding a folder. Same kind he used to strut around with like a badge. Inside, a business proposal. Not to invest. To work. He wanted a job. The phone lit up just after 9. Unknown number. I almost let it go. But something in me, it was instinct, or maybe just habit, made me pick up. Hello. The voice on the other end cracked before it even formed a word. Mike. It was Clarissa. I had not heard from her since the day she stood in my doorway, clutching that glass of water and whispering about Leonard's collapse. Back then, her panic felt like a window cracking under pressure. Now, it was full-on shatter. He left, she said. He just packed up and walked out. My chest tightened, not from shock, but from something colder. A sense of inevitability. Left where? Our daughter's school called, she said. Said tuition never came through. Then the mortgage, what was left of it, bounced. I called the bank. He took what little we had left. Every account. Gone. My jaw clenched. When was this? 2 days ago. 2 days. Leonard had been at the job site yesterday, smiling, asking about new safety signage. Like everything was fine. She kept talking. Her voice rose and fell like a dying battery. He always said he would fix it, that he just needed time. But when things got tight, I guess he chose himself. Again. Then she paused. Quiet. I think he might have taken something from your office. My blood ran cold. I checked my drawer. The lease agreements were still there. The keys. The spare lockbox. But the banking logins? The emergency fund info? The USB drive I used for backups? Gone. It hit me then. Leonard had not just asked for a second chance. He had been casing the place. I hung up, heart pounding. Pulled up the company bank account on my phone. 3 transfers. 2 flagged. 1 already processed. $8,000. Gone. I stared at the screen, and something inside me finally snapped back into place. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. This man, Leonard, had not changed. He had just adapted. Shifted his mask from pride to pity. And I had bought it. But this time I was ready. I called the bank. Froze the accounts. Filed the report. And then I drove straight to the one place I figured he might be desperate enough to return to. His old house. The one I now owned. And as I turned onto the street, headlights flaring against the dusk, there he was, standing on the lawn, looking straight at me, holding the USB drive in one hand and a suitcase in the other. He did not move when I stepped out of the truck, just stood there, suitcase by his side, drive in his hand, looking like a man who had run out of lies to tell. I walked slowly up the path, the same path I poured myself one summer night, sweating into the gravel, dreaming of this exact spot being mine. Now it was. I stopped a few feet from him. He raised the USB between 2 fingers. I didn't sell it, he said. I couldn't. I said nothing. I thought I could just borrow, he mumbled, eyes flicking toward the porch like it might still be his. It got bad. Real bad. Clarissa cut me off. The card stopped working. You looked me in the eye, I said, calm. You said you wanted work. What you wanted was a foothold. He swallowed. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is that you were given every chance and still found a way to sink lower. He blinked. Hard. Like he was trying not to cry. You think I don't know what I did to you, he said, voice rising. I remember every comment. Every time I made you feel like less. But I was trying to survive the only way I knew how. Pretending. And now? I asked. He looked down. Now there's nothing left to pretend about. He held out the USB. I took it. Then he reached for the suitcase. I'll go. I just thought maybe Marissa could stay a few more days. Just until her aunt gets back from out of town. That hit harder than I expected. Because she was the only part of him that had ever shown honesty. She can stay, I said. But you go now. And you do not come back. He nodded once. No fight. No protest. Just a quiet, broken, thank you. He turned and walked toward the sidewalk, shoes crunching over the gravel I had laid down myself. When he reached the corner, he looked back once. Just once. I stood there, holding everything he had left behind. His daughter's future, the drive he tried to steal, and the key to the house he used to mock. And in that moment, I felt none of what I thought I would. No pride. No bitterness. Just peace. Because I had risen without shouting. I had built my life in silence, while men like Leonard spent theirs performing. Now he had nothing. And I had everything.